Hey everybody, this is Primetime Tom. Um, so I'm going to attempt to do my review of the first issue of a 16 issue run of Nth Man, Ultimate Ninja. The writer is Larry Hama. He worked on the Marvel run of G.I. Joe, which was very popular, I believe, in the 80s and 90s. This was an interesting book. A lot of, in the beginning, a lot of reds and grays in the art. It kind of opens up and unfolds with a rescue team going in to KGB headquarters in, let me see if I can remember. Anyway, somewhere in Russia. As the plot line goes, a man named Alfie, let's see, please forgive me, Alfie Omegan, was an orphan. Was known to have some telekinetic powers since adolescence. He could move objects. And apparently he was the one that started World War III in this book after having destroyed the world's stockpile of nuclear weapons. And that obviously pissed off a lot of the different countries and resulted in World War III. And the big baddie in this, also known as the Ice Queen, is Colonel, let's see, her name is Colonel Novikanova. And she's basically a blonde femme fatale, commanding presence. This is her looking out upon the war-torn country as these Americans are flying down to rescue Nth Man, who is a CIA, wonder power. Also has telekinetic powers. His name is unknown. He's known as John Doe. And he was taught his ninja skills by none other than his dentist. Yes, that's right, his dentist. It's kind of silly. And so it kind of unfolds with Colonel Novikanova on the phone, talking to her KGB counterparts, telling them, yes, the Americans are here, they are attacking, and it kind of in the background, her right-hand man is seen watching a news report talking about Alfie. And that's a picture of Alfie right there. And the battle ensues. The Americans make their way down. And the dentist, known as, let me try and find his name. Please forgive me for this. The dentist's name is... It's going to take me some time here. I'm not doing very well. So anyway, it shows the battle between the Americans and the tanks. They're raining down fire, basically shooting canisters of what the Russians thought was, napalm, and ended up being, what was it? Basically just foam, fire retardant, kind of to act as a cover so that the Americans could sneak in. Novikanova um, lets uh, the the guy in charge basically in the basement of the KGB, who's holding him, John Doe, captive, Nth Man. She lets him know that the Americans have made their way through. He, in turn, goes to the prison cell of John Doe. And John Doe is sitting there eating, kind of acting a little smug, saying, you think you can hold me, I'm powerful. And then at the same time, it cuts back to, Ice Queen Novakanova's apartment. She's saying that the Americans are here. They're afraid that the Chinese are going to make their way in to invade Russia at the same exact time. And it says, on the news, it cuts to the news report. It says, late bulletin, the Chinese spearhead towards Moscow. Fortunately for Novakanova and the rest of her, the Russians there, the Chinese pushed their attack back and started to retreat. So then it cuts back to John Doe. He's using his ninja skills, throws his plate of food at them, hits two of the guys in the neck with his plate. It then cuts to, the art. The art is actually pretty good. The facial expressions are drawn very well. In this whole time, the guy that's holding him captive down there in the prison, John Doe is saying, you think I'm gonna let you shoot me? He says, I didn't even get, an audience with Novakanova, the Ice Queen. And then John Doe, tells him, he says, Novakanova, she's pretty smart and very careful. She suspects the truth about me, which is that he's this operative known as Nth Man. That's his secret identity. And he says, the truth that you're going to find out in person, he's telling this guy. He says, you're going to, the guy's name is Captain Chernin. He says, having some trouble there squeezing that trigger? You really do still think that you're going to shoot me when I just took two of your guys out with my plate of mutton or whatever goulash they were feeding him? Then it cuts back to outside. The sergeant, Sergeant Levin, who is leading this platoon, he's badly wounded. He says, telling his men, they're trying to get it through a steel door. He says, Sergeant Levin is saying, you got to get through that steel door. He says, that man that you're going to get out of this basement, he says that, Nth Man is our last chance to save the world from what Alfie O'Megan started, World War III. You see his sensei, the dentist, holding his umbrella. Okay, so it goes further even in. John Doe, he's in, the basement of this KGB headquarters. He's saying, I've been waiting almost a year for Colonel Novakanova, your Ice Queen, to come visit me. I've been losing my patience, man. He says, he's like, John Doe is using his powers on Colonel Chernin. And he's like, yeah, I can't move my finger. He's like, how are you doing this? And John Doe is acting all cocky, holds his muscles up. Says, it's just a little trick I learned from my dentist. He says, I can do a lot of tricks, He says, that's why they call me the Nth Man. And, just kind of this whole cheesy thing. He's Nth Man. John Doe is showing his prowess to Colonel Chernin. And, Colonel Chernин's like, oh, yeah, cheap theatrical trick. Mesmerism, kind of likens it to Rasputin, who was the magician, evil magician in Russian times. Says, you can't. And he fires the guy and he goes, you can't dodge bullets. And, Nth Man just socks him with his ninja kung fu, and he says, "Oh, says you." You know. So yeah, the art is well done. You know, it's got, the panels, the cut down of the bullet being shot, the slow motion, Nth Man stopping the bullet. Goes back through, cuts back to John Doe, sneaking around, obviously grabs Colonel Chernon's gun, machine gun. It says upstairs and outside. Nova Canova, she's making her way out. She's asking, she's saying, is Dzerzhinsky Square, which is where this KGB headquarters is located in Russia, she says, is it completely sealed off? She says, I want you to send a group of paratroopers in to follow me inside. I'm going in. I want to verify that Nth Man is actually dead. Because she's been wanting him dead this whole time. So the guys the platoon makes it through the steel door. Dr. Yagyu, that's the name of his dentist, his sensei. He's like, what the hell are you doing here? And he's like, oh, I'm just checking up on my so-called prize student. He says, you're getting kind of sloppy, boy. He says, I could hear you breathing and walking through that solid steel door. He's like, I taught you better than that. So he's like staring Dr. Yagyu down. He's like, dude, I was being quiet enough to escape the detection of anyone. He's like, well, I guess except a ninja master who's also my dentist. He's like, and you never expected to run into the KGB headquarters. It's so sloppy. And I guess Sergeant Levin survived his wounds. He's like, Sergeant Levin, give John Doe his sword. And then John Doe saying, oh, the sit rep must be hairy to the max if Langley is sending decrepit coots like you into the field. And Dr. Yagyu's like, oh, you want your butt kicked, student? And he says, the CIA wants to cancel your mission. He says, they got something more important for you to take care of, which is, John Doe, Nth Man's like, don't change the rules on me, Doc. You always told me to start the mission that I, was told to finish. He says, as soon as we get out of here, it's going to be business as usual. So there he's getting his katana back. Yeah, the colors and shadings in this, all the way down to the defining of Nth Man's muscles. It's interesting that it goes to gray down here in this panel. Kind of goes dark. Then it cuts back to the action upstairs to the KGB headquarters. Colonel Novakanova's men are freaking out. They're saying, oh, the Americans held out to the last man at Central Committee building. They lured in half a battalion and blew up the building. She says that's, her Novakanova's right-hand man. He's like, the insanity. The Americans attacked the wrong building? Because apparently this whole time they were trying to create a diversion by attacking the wrong building. And she's like, oh, they must have known about the secret tunnel. But even if a few got through that tunnel, they're trapped and their objective is dead. So she seems to think that, Nth Man is dead. They failed their plan. And then her, right-hand man was like, I'm curious, what's so important about this John Doe? He, concocted an elaborate escape attempt. You never even bothered to, interrogate him yourself. As John Doe had said, why is it, to Colonel Chernin, why is it that I never got an audience with Nova Canova, with your Ice Queen? And she says, I tried. He must have used his special powers of persuasion. She says, I was waiting for him to soften up. And then she said, I studied his file. And she said, our researchers dug into his past. They came up with some choice tidbits. And he's like, really? For example? So she goes on to say, John Doe may have been at the skunk farm. Okay, there's this place called the skunk farm at the same time as Alfie O'Megan, the man who also has these telekinetic powers. So interesting. Is it possible that maybe Nth Man and this Alfie know each other? So she goes on to say, he's linked to a certain Irving Yagyu, the dentist, DDS, who trains assassins for the CIA. She says the Yagyu clan has been ninjas for centuries. So Dr. Yagyu is part of this ongoing clan of ninjas. Hence the reason John Doe learned these ninja skills, because he's a trained operative. So she says John Doe, he might have been through, this training, and she seems to think, she's onto him. She knows that he's the, so quote-unquote, nth man. She says all that adds up to a dangerous end, and then all of a sudden she stops in her tracks. Somebody's coming up the stairs from the basement. Take cover. And, nth man continues. He's talking to this female commando, I guess, that was sent in with Dr. Yagyu. She's apparently the daughter of one of the higher-ups in the military. He says, why do you keep staring at my back? Back off. And she's like, I know that, nothing's going to stop you from taking down Nova Canova. She says, you know what, because of you, because we came in to rescue you, a lot of good men died. She's like, does any of this matter to you besides getting revenge on Ice Queen? He's like, I didn't ask to be rescued by some snot-nosed kid. She goes for him. And, he's like, shh, stop. They know we're here. It's Nova Canova there. She's got her gun at the ready. Yep, the facial expressions, his anger right there is just so fierce. So fierce. He's like, let's do it. So they just go in, no holds barred, burst through the door. Nth man's like, I hope you still got the knack, Doc. And Dr. Yagyu makes this joke. He's like, I may be a senior citizen, but I'm not senile. And then, the right-hand man's like, Captain Chernin should have, just rolled one of these through a cell door, through a bomb. Grenade! And they say, there goes our backup. So then one thing leads to another. Nth man gets the upper hand, puts a blade to Nova Canova's neck. She's like, please don't do that. You can just see the anger in his face. Then out of nowhere comes Yagyu's umbrella hook. He's like, Peachy, stop it. And I'm like, Peachy? He's like, oh, still embarrasses you, huh, Nth man? He says, you can't kill her. She's like, we need her to get out of here. He's like, oh, Doc, I told you to stop calling me Peachy when I was 9. Canova's like, Peachy? Really? Peachy? So they walk out with a gun to her back. She pretends, she's forced to say, bring up my car. They're like praising her. Oh, Colonel Nova Canova, true hero of the people. She says, and then she says, Captain Soloviev, I guess that's her hand man, will be in the front with the driver. Next thing you know, Yagyu's pointing a gun at him. He's like, next place we're going is by way of China. And he's like, that's 2,000 kilometers. And Yagyu is like, well, you better hurry. So out comes the right-hand man. He's like, stop that car. He says, the prisoners are escaping. They have the colonel hostage. And they're like, that rifle they were holding was empty. Next thing you know, Nth man grabs her, says, farewell, Vivara, it's been real. Like, kisses her, like, on the lips. Like, literally on the lips. I'm like, what in the world? And just tosses her out of the car into what I believe is a puddle of water or a river or something. And Dr. Yagyu's like, what in the world? Why in the heck did you do that? And Nth man is like, well, she'll die explaining that to the first chief directorate. See what you started, Doc? And then the smart sergeant's daughter, whoever came with Yagyu, said, they're going to shoot her as a traitor. That's some assassination weapon you got there, Peachy. And then it ends with her sopped up in a puddle of water. So a very interesting story. This is my first experience with Larry Hama, I'm afraid to say, and it was definitely all over the place. It took you in, it grabbed you by the collar, with the Americans going in to rescue John Doe. They had all this stuff going on with the tanks on the ground trying to fight back the Americans, to cutting back to the Ice Queen, Nova Canova, her interacting with her right-hand man, to the information on the TV about Alpha Omega, as to, explaining this whole background on why World War III was happening, on down to the rescue of Nth Man, to their escape, to John Doe taking on the Ice Queen, Nova Canova, and to him, jokingly or funny, very funny, well, is that even a word? Anyway, him tossing her out of the car. I would say it's not too bad. I am definitely looking forward to the second issue. Like I said, I really like the art. The artwork was done, let's see. So it was Ron Wagner on pencils. Coloring was done by Mark Chiarello. So yeah, not too bad. If you just want to give you some more ideas of the artwork in there. Just the reds and grays of war happening. Just, yeah, some pretty good, coloring done. Some, good definition on the faces of the characters, especially Nth Man. And the action of, him taking on everybody. And so, yeah, I would say I would give Nth Man probably, I don't know, on a scale of 1 to 5. Probably the first issue, a 3.75. So that's my take on the first issue of Nth Man Ultimate Ninja. Hope you guys liked it. Look for me and Herminio from Herminio's Collectibles, also known as Big Herm, for our next review of the current Spider-Man run, Zeb Wells' Spider-Man run. And I will see you guys there. All right, thank you. Bye.